On the show that bring you self-defense to your living room. I think we've been doing all this show all these years out of self-defense. We try to defend our reputation. Muslim has a bad image, so we try to improve that. But in the news, last week there was interesting news, about the black person from Brooklyn. He was released after 25 years in jail. They just found out he was wrongfully accused of murder now. And in the same time, we have George Zimmerman is signing autograph in a gun show in Florida. And then, and also on the macro level, we have been following what President Obama is doing with his drones. Thousands of sorties, thousands of attacks in Afghanistan, in Yemen, and everywhere. Hundreds of people are killed, mostly civilians. And we try to talk about the connection between the self-defense concept and how it has been used to justify murder and violence on an individual level and on a macro level. We have here somebody who really following this case and studying. We have here Professor Peter Thomson. He is a professor at law in Hamline, and also he is the former prosecutor, public defenders, and he has a lot of credential under his belt. Welcome to BelAhdan, Peter. Thank you so much. I know we didn't have a chance to meet you last week. Kind enough to come and spend some time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
But really, when you just leave the politics out of Obama is doing and the politics of using drones now in Afghanistan and Iraq and Pakistan and Yemen, get rid of them, kill them so they won't kill us here. But it seems like when he was pressed and people want to ask about the legal or the legality of using the drones, the self-defense defense was used. Also, that stand your ground is based on the self-defense of Zimmerman and the other Don that just killed a couple of people shot in the cars. So tell us a little bit about. You cannot just nonchalant or casually use the self-defense to justify an act of violence. So from a legal stand, what is self-defense and when can you use it, when it's right to use it and all this?
Yes, it has some historical roots, self-defense. And as you're pointing out, it can apply in individual situations. That's what Zimmerman's defense was, that he was acting in self-defense. And it also has application, as you're saying, macro, in international situations, war kind of situations. So if we could, I'd just like to go back a little as to where this idea came from in self-defense. And if it gets too boring or too legalistic.
Yeah, well, not at Hamline, but
or too historical. Then
no, it's fine. I think history is great.
Just rein me in.
Yeah.
So, from the Christian tradition, it really started. That after Jesus in those first centuries, people were pacifists. Christians were pacifists.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. And there was a question whether or not they could serve in the Roman army and all those sort of things. And there got to be political heat on the Christians that they were causing the demise of the Roman Empire. And so their leading theologian at the time developed the first ideas of just war.
Yes.
And that would give a rationale so that the Christians wouldn't be criticized unduly. And that started off with several ideas. The first one, St. Augustine in the 4th century, who was the leading Christian theologian then, said that defense of others is justified if they are facing a threat of death, that a Christian would be entitled to defend that person and could use violence and force to defend the person to keep the other from being killed, because we are supposed to love our neighbors. Now,
well, if you can't defend yourself, how can you defend others?
it's interesting because you are not to love yourself, you are to love your neighbors. And so the first rendition of this self-defense was only for others. You were still not, as a pacifist, to defend yourself with violence.
Interesting.
So of course then it grew from there into various things, and it grew in very similar ways, both as to individual defense and as to national defense. And some of the common elements of these were, number one, it could be used if you were being attacked. You were not supposed to initiate the violence. Okay, so it would be defense, hence self-defense.
Yes.
It could be used if it was necessary to avoid death or serious bodily harm.
I see.
In other words, if the person attacking you was just a burglar, you wouldn't be entitled to kill them unless they had a weapon.
Well, yeah, guys.
So that was another process. It's called proportionality.
Yes.
In other words, if on a larger scale, if there's a protest, the police are not supposed to pull out the howitzers, you know, to blow all the protesters away. So it has to be reasonable. That brings up another thing. It has to be discriminate. In other words, if I have grounds to defend myself from you, but you're with 3 others, I can't blow you all up because they are innocent, and I can only use it against the person who is bringing the attack to me.
Interesting, because that's really what the Obama administration, or before him, Bush, they want to convince the American this is very smart and very accurate, and it goes after the villain, the bad people, where in fact 50%, at least the number that would say, of the people who get killed are civilians.
That's the problem. It doesn't meet the discrimination. Discrimination is what you call that. You are supposed to discriminate and be proportionate.
And the attention. Well, I could say, well, I'm trying my best. I'm using all this technology to go after this bad guy. Well, God darn it, you know.
Well, the result is the real important thing.
Exactly.
And when the result is wrong, then the process needs to change. The other problem there, and this is the last criteria that's generally accepted, is immediacy.
Yes.
In other words, if the thought is that suspected terrorists riding in a car across Yemen pose a threat to the United States, in order to take them out at that point, first of all, you have to have good grounds to do it, and secondly, you have to believe that their threat is an immediate one to the United States, not something that may occur sometime in the future.
And it's hard to believe somebody in Yemen or in Kandahar has an immediate or constitute an immediate threat to the United States.
And that's why when asked what is the basis of the drone program, for a long period of time they wouldn't say.
Oh, I see.
And they finally had to say self-defense because it's the only real legal means, but when really compared to the criteria of self-defense, it comes up far short.
You know, I was thinking about the last incident. I think it was in Florida when somebody just perceived he was, under threat because a car with a few young black kids were in it. He started shooting in the car and he killed one of them and injured 3. The funny thing, I think it's funny, he was indicted of manslaughter or not manslaughter. He was exonerated for the person who was killed, but he was indicted for the people who were injured.
Oh.
Based on, it was self-defense. He feared for his life. So somebody was tweeting or say something that the right for a black person to live is less than the right of a white person or the right of a white person to fear this. So you kill somebody, you assume he's gonna you have a threat, and that right of a white person to kill for self-defense is higher on a legal ground than the right of the black person to live.
Well, it certainly shouldn't be. And what that reminds me of is you had a show, I think 6 months ago, with a professor from the University of Minnesota about the racism in the criminal justice system, and she eloquently, spoke about those
And
things.
it was about also Zimmerman's case.
Yeah.
So if we're going to use the jury system, we cannot separate culture from the legal system.
That's the problem. And
Because,
where that comes up is in jury selection.
Yes.
And so, the whites complained about it in the O.J. Simpson case, and the blacks complained about it in the Rodney King case. And you have all these things where our culture, in particular parts of our culture, it's a very imperfect system. And it's probably the best system in the world that I know of, but it's very imperfect, and some of the saddest imperfections are these racism and other discriminatory ideas.
Let's talk about.
Let me tell you just one anecdote.
Okay.
I talked to a good defense lawyer when I was just learning to try cases, and I was talking to him about a murder case I had coming up, and he listened to the facts. And it was a black man who was accused of killing another black man. And he said, Peter, you'll have a very good chance of winning that case because it's not a murder, it's a black killing. And that speaks volumes about, those kind of racist attitudes. And they exist. And as a lawyer, sometimes you need to, when selecting jurors and things like that, even take advantage of those things to try and win your case.
Well, let's take a short break here, and then we'll come to this case. We're talking about the self-defense and how it's been used on a private level, individual level, and also on a national level. We'll take a free break. We'll come back in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum, and God bless you all. We continue here. We're getting the Muslim American reaction to the Zimmerman case, and whether was it about guns or about race.
I don't think it was really about any of these things. Because guns, it's legal in Florida to carry it for stand your ground. And race was never mentioned by the judge. I think it's a case where the prosecutor botched up the case.
Oh, the case, I think the justice system in America always works right. In this case, I feel sorry for the life of this young man.
The three things that were taken on Zimmerman are all legal. It's legal to go out and follow somebody that you're suspicious of.
Is it legal to shoot somebody?
No, but that was in the middle of the fight. It's really unfortunate.
If this guy was defending himself or just doing it, whatever, nobody knows what's inside his heart. But the life is gone, and everybody has his day in court. That's what I believe.
But in the end, a young man was killed, and he was killed by a gun. So it circles back to guns, 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 and more guns. If there wasn't a gun in the mix, we may have had two people beating each other up, and nobody would be dead.
The real issue. The issue was not about black and white and the gun or not. That was legal issue. And apparently the prosecution didn't do a very good job.
I think we have an example here of a 21st century lynching. You no longer need a lynch mob. The mob comes and contributes to your internet site after you've done the single-handed lynching.
When he heard of the stand your ground laws, he said this is just another form of hunting black people.
It's groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, the Tea Party, the GOP, the Republican Party, and the NRA that have brought about these terrible laws.